Well, welcome to Outlook. We're so glad you've joined us today. It's an exciting time, and I'm thrilled to have a special friend that I met at a women's conference at Gateway Church in South Lake. Her name is Stephanie Kleesky, and she has for 15 years been a pistol packing mama. Oh, she's on the police force there in Arlington, and I got to hear about Mission Arlington. I want that for Longview. And she has just delightfully agreed to come and share with us today about what she does, not only in her job, but in her love for Jesus job, as she shares with others in Mission Arlington. So today you're in Longview, Stephanie.
Yes, ma'am.
And we're so glad to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
And I am delighted to hear you have another friend that others listening and watching might know.
I bet they will. Her name is Patti Foster.
And she's been with KVNE in the past.
She has.
KVNE, excuse me.
Yes, she has been a radio personality in the past. And I believe it was 9 years ago this June, she was involved in a terrible accident.
I remember.
Yes, ma'am. Many of y'all probably prayed for her.
I know we did.
Yes, ma'am. She and 3 of her girls, they were on their way to Bible study, and Patti was the teacher that evening. It was the last one before their summer break. And they were stopped at a red light in an SUV, and a car hauler 18-wheeler going 70 miles an hour hit them at a standstill.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, ma'am. One of the young ladies in the car unfortunately died, the young lady who was directly in front of Patti. But Patti had, since they were at a red light, she had taken off her seatbelt to check on the flower vases behind her that she was bringing to all her girls. And when the truck hit, her body was ejected out the window. And that's actually what saved her life.
Goodness gracious.
Yes, ma'am.
That's an experience and a miracle.
Well, she's had to learn, literally a miracle. God had to put her little body back together. She's had to learn how to blink her eyes again, how to walk, how to talk. And if you were to see Patti Foster today and not know her story, she looks just like you and I. You wouldn't know that she has traumatic brain injury. But I want her to come tell you the story.
I want her to come tell me the story, too.
Yes, ma'am.
Goodness, thank you for driving all the way down from Arlington.
Oh, my pleasure.
Tell me, how did you become in love with law enforcement?
Well, you know, all things work together for good, don't they?
They do, especially when we love the Lord.
And I'll tell you, I grew up in a family that was quite religious, but I don't know that they necessarily had a relationship with Christ. My parents were very, very young, teenagers, and when I came along rather unexpectedly, my mother made the very bold decision not to have an abortion. Because it was 1974 when I came along. Of course, that was right after Roe v. Wade. And even though she was 17 years old and a dropout from high school, and her family was telling her to do so, she didn't.
Well, don't you know that she is proud of you?
She is.
And I'm proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I had a mother that had an abortion. It was forced on her by her then mother-in-law.
Wow.
And she found out that her husband of 3 months was a womanizer. And the mother-in-law didn't want her pregnant, and she was forced into an abortion.
Mercy.
And we dealt with insanity for years.
Mercy.
And I didn't know your story, but life is so precious.
Yes.
And not only that, but Psalm says that children are God's inheritance.
That's right. That's right.
And when we abort a child, we're choosing to end the life of God's inheritance.
That's right.
And to me, it gives me lumps in the throat. But life is such a privilege.
That's right.
And even though we can mess up, Jesus has made a way for us to come back.
That's exactly right.
And as if it were never there.
That's right.
And
His grace.
So law enforcement gives you a lot of opportunity, doesn't it?
It does. It really does. And I draw tremendously, especially earlier in my career, from my family background, because my parents were young and they made mistakes.
And who doesn't?
That's right. And there were drugs involved and some other things. But because of the experiences I had growing up in our environment, I knew what to expect as a police officer. I knew.
That's way ahead of most of us.
I knew.
That are not in awareness.
Right. Now, but once I accepted Christ at the age of 21, not only did I have that foundation of what it's like living in environments such as that, but I also knew the grace and the mercy that Christ can offer.
Yes.
And so there were so many young women that I've had the privilege, and I do mean that, the privilege of speaking to and sharing with and encouraging, and especially the children who were living in difficult environments because their parents make poor choices. And I can look them in the eye and tell them with all sincerity that God has a purpose and a plan for your life.
Oh, awesome.
Because He did for mine. And I know, because I know how you're living, I know how your parents are living, but I also know that there's a future and a hope.
Yes.
So.
We just may sing. Well, tell me, do you have other brothers and sisters?
I do. I have one younger brother, and I'm proud to say that he accepted Christ when he was 17, and he is now married and has his first child. I have a little niece.
So, well, tell me, how did you discover Jesus?
Well, now I might get a lump in my throat telling you this story.
That'll be okay.
But her name is Sheila Fitzgerald.
All right.
And Miss Sheila Fitzgerald is a woman that I grew up across the street from. And she still lives in that same house. She just turned 80 years old.
Did she really?
And let me tell you what Sheila did. Sheila, she didn't know anything about drugs. She didn't know anything about violence. Just a sweet Christian woman. And I don't know that she necessarily knew all that was going on in our household, but she knew enough to open up her home to my brother and I and any other child in the neighborhood that wanted to come. She would always have a bag of clothes from the church that we could go through and pilfer through.
How neat.
We would sit at her kitchen table and we drank grape juice and ate wheat thins, and she told us about Jesus. But she made sure that we had a safe place to be, and she loved us as we were, where we were, and she always made sure our basic needs were met. Now, fast forward to when I'm 17 and I left home and I came down to Texas and went to school.
So you didn't grow, you're not original Texan?
I shouldn't have said that. I let that slip. No, ma'am, I am from Connecticut.
Are you?
And at the age of 17, of course, this was ordained by the Lord, but I knew that I didn't want to be like my family. And I knew I needed to do something different. And in my mind, that was college, because no one had been to college. No one had that education. So I had a cousin in California, and my mother's twin brother lived down in Houston. And I thought, well, I need to at least go to college in a state where I have some sort of connection. And so I just looked at a map and said, Dallas, Fort Worth, I bet you I can get a job there. And if you can believe this, at 17, I had one semester paid for at the University of Texas at Arlington.
Wonderful.
And $1,500 in my pocket. And I got on a plane and landed at Arlington 20 years ago. And so the first person I met at the University of Texas at Arlington Police Department, which is where I worked through college, was a believer. And he was an usher at his church. And he bought me my first Bible, and he brought me to church. And I recall that day, sitting in that pew when I accepted Christ, all those stories that Sheila Fitzgerald had told me came back. I mean, they just flooded my mind. And I thought, I need to call her. And I hadn't spoken to her in probably 3 or 4 years. And I said, Sheila, this is Stephanie. Do you remember me? And she said, of course I remember you. I spent nearly every day at her kitchen table. I'm sure she did. But I said, well, I just have to tell you, I accepted Jesus. I'm going to be baptized in a week.
Awesome.
And of course, I cried and she cried, but this is what she said. She said, Stephanie, I have been praying for you for 16 years. She said, I remember the day that your family moved in to the house across the street. You were 5 years old. You had these little pigtails and you were riding your bicycle up and down the sidewalk. She said, I looked at your parents and they looked real young. And then I looked at the furniture and it looked really used, and I thought, I don't know who these folks are, but God told me that I needed to pray for you. And she prayed for me for 16 years. She was faithful, Rachel, faithful woman of God.
Oh, that's precious.
Yes, ma'am.
That's precious. Maybe you have a neighbor. Maybe you have a neighbor's child. And maybe I do. Maybe we need to get busy. How did you get involved with Mission Arlington?
Well, again, at 17, it was my first Thanksgiving. I didn't know very
Okay.
many people, and I was a student at UTA, and in the newspaper, the school newspaper, there was this advertisement that said there's this place called Mission Arlington that delivered Thanksgiving meals, and I thought, well, that's a good thing to do. And so I walked over there, and I got busy, and that's the
You've
first
been
time.
there ever since?
That was the first introduction I had to Mission Arlington. And then, once I accepted Jesus, my church was in Dallas, and I lived in Arlington. And Pastor said, you always need to be involved in your church. But I was working a crazy shift from 7 p.m. to 4 a.m., and I thought, well, I don't know how I'm going to do that. But then I thought, well, I remember that place called Mission Arlington. And I walked in the back door and asked if I could work, and I was told Tilly Bergen, our CEO, gets to work at 3:30 in the morning. She said, you get off at 4, you just come and start stocking the food pantry for us. And I said, yes, ma'am.
So
I've been there
at
ever since.
3:30 in the morning?
That's when she arrives.
Tell us about Tilly.
Gosh, I probably will not do her justice, but she is an incredible saint, just an incredible woman of God. I believe she'll be 75 this August. But her heart is missions. She was born and raised in Arlington, Texas.
Was she really?
Yes, ma'am. As a matter of fact, her daddy had the service station in town, and it's only a couple blocks from where Mission Arlington is right now.
Really?
So she hadn't gone very far. She did go by way of South Korea. She and her husband, Bob, were missionaries in South Korea for
Yes.
10 years.
Really?
And then they came back to Arlington with their boys and became educators, the two of them. Bob still works for Dallas Baptist University. And Tilly just got busy. She and Bob and two other couples, good friends of theirs, prayed over Arlington, Texas, because they said, surely there are people in Arlington that don't know Jesus. And so for several months they prayed, and out of that prayer and out of that faithfulness, Mission Arlington began.
And so what does Mission Arlington do? I mean,
Well,
tell us how maybe you are inspired so that in Longview we can have Mission Longview.
absolutely. And I'll share with y'all what we do now, but let me begin with how it began.
All right.
Now, it was just a prayer to go to where the people are and to bring the church to the people.
Okay.
And so Tilly met a young woman, single mom, in an apartment that needed her electric bill paid about 25 years ago now. And Tilly said, well, we'll help you pay your electric bill if you let us have Bible study there Sunday morning. And she said, absolutely. And so that's how it started at St. Charles Apartments 25 years ago, is bringing church to apartment communities, to pay-by-the-day motels, like where I am, to senior citizen centers. And then over the years, really, we like to say we bathe everything in prayer. So whatever it is the people have need of. Tilly recalls when she and Bob were both educators and had two young boys, and how things were just difficult, and Mom and Dad would come with a sack of groceries, and that would be such a blessing. And so she thought, well, we need to help with food. So we have a food pantry. That grew into furniture. Someone had a couch, and she found somebody who needed a couch, so now we have furniture that we distribute. We have a dental clinic.
You do.
A medical clinic. We do after-school programs. We are in just over 300 locations on Sunday morning.
300?
Yes, ma'am. Throughout Arlington and Grand Prairie, Texas.
Are they mostly in apartment settings?
Yes,
or?
ma'am. We do have some traditional churches, what your viewers would consider traditional brick and mortar churches. But for the most part, we go out to the apartments and the motels.
And teach the Bible?
Yes, ma'am.
Every Sunday?
Yes, ma'am.
That's awesome.
We have after-school programs during the week in some locations. We even have English as a second language because many people want to learn English. And so we do that
Do
too.
you do anything like computer training or job searching? Or
We work with several agencies and they utilize our building space so that people can have access to those services.
So do you also distribute clothes
Yes, ma'am.
beyond the food?
We do.
Okay.
And we do some really special things around the holidays.
Do you?
We
Tell
do.
us.
Now, Christmas, of course, Thanksgiving I've mentioned. This past Thanksgiving, we distributed over 5,000 turkey baskets.
My
Turkeys and
goodness.
baskets. And hot meals.
Oh my goodness.
And so it's really a beautiful place for about 2,500 volunteers to come Thanksgiving morning. And it's become a tradition for many families. They'll come early in the morning, about 8 a.m., and grab their turkey and turkey basket and a MapsGo page so they know which address they're going to, and then they can be a blessing to other folks. But Christmas time, about maybe 10, 12 years ago or so, Tilly realized that come January and February, people who were working were coming in and saying, can you help us with our mortgage? Can you help us with our electric bill? Well, of course, because they wanted their children to have Christmas. And they were spending their hard-earned money on Christmas, and come January couldn't pay their bills. So Tilly said, well, why don't we help you with Christmas so you have the dignity of being able to pay your own bills? And so that's how the Christmas store began. And what it is real simple. Folks come, they hear the gospel in English and Spanish, the story of Jesus, and then they can shop, if you will, for free. We have a building set up just like a store, and everything in there is brand new. And a parent can come and receive one large gift and 2 small gifts per child. And they have the dignity of selecting those gifts themselves and then having them gift wrapped, and we provide child care while the parent's shopping. And then they can go home and have Christmas.
I love that.
We had, let me see here, I have my cheat sheet. I think we had over 30,000 folks come to the Christmas store.
Wow.
Yes, ma'am. And last year, 464 people accepted Jesus.
464.
At the Christmas store.
At the Christmas store.
Just by hearing the gospel.
Once a year.
Yes, ma'am.
Not even mentioning, though, that you're having Sunday meetings and Bible study.
Yes.
Every Sunday.
Yes.
In 300 places.
Yes, ma'am.
So how many people are in attendance of that?
Roughly, every Sunday, we'll have about 3,000.
3,000.
In all those different places.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yes, ma'am.
So if I were to receive Jesus in a home Bible study on a Sunday morning and wanted to be baptized, what happens?
Oh, we'll bring a baptismal out to the apartment complex.
Awesome.
Yes, ma'am. We will bring it on out. And we'll baptize you right there. And you know, for many folks who live in these apartments and motels, that is their church.
Yes.
That's their church.
And not only that, it makes them aware of those around them.
That's exactly right.
Which is much better than going in the Metroplex. You can go miles and miles to a church and not know anyone in your neighborhood, maybe.
Mm-hmm. And they're comfortable.
And they're comfortable. That is great.
Yes.
Do you have anything that you can share with me, maybe that you do specifically for children or youth?
Well, I can give an example. Let me share what we do at the mission and then maybe an example of what I do in the motels. We do have summer camps for children.
You do?
Yes, ma'am. We run basketball leagues in the spring. And we have summer camps in the summertime. We do what's called Rainbow Express, which is our version of Vacation Bible School. And we will do that every spring break and all throughout the summer months. And we do that with young people who come from all across the country. We have about 30 college kids who are spending the entire summer with us as missionaries, but we also have youth groups that will come and spend about a week with us, 2 weeks. They can stay however long they like. And they will go out to these apartment complexes and knock on doors and then put on a Vacation Bible School, Rainbow Express for kids.
That is wonderful.
Yes.
How creative. You know, the message stays the same, but the vehicle changes for whatever we need, and that's wonderful. Where do all these youngsters stay when they come from all over the U.S.?
Well, they have options. They can stay with us. Many of our full-time missionaries at Mission Arlington live in these same apartment complexes where they minister on Sunday.
That's wonderful.
And many of the apartment managers are very generous with us. They will allow us additional apartments for these young folks to stay. We also partner with many different faith communities in Arlington, and so they may bring a sleeping bag and go sleep in a gymnasium at a church.
Goodness gracious. I am so impressed. I really am. You know, I was thinking yesterday as I was running my errands, in our nation right now, look at what we're facing. Economically, people need work. We are having flooding. We are dealing with tornadoes. We're dealing with the question of illegals and immigration. We are dealing with in-state difficulties economically and government-wise. We're dealing with national the same way. Then security issues. In every direction, we have opportunities like never before.
That's right.
And I was thinking, if I lived in the 1200s, I wouldn't know anything bad that's happening anywhere else unless it's happening to me. But today I have opportunities around the world.
Mm-hmm.
Around the world. I have opportunities in Haiti and Japan and Iceland and France and Longview, Texas.
That's right.
And Mission Arlington. and the media is what makes it available, isn't it?
Yes.
If I were a person that had just moved to Longview, the number one thing I need to do then is probably pray and see what God wants me to do.
Absolutely.
What would you suggest would be the next thing?
Well, if you would just like to come and see, you can visit missionarlington.org.
missionarlington.org.
And if you just like to jump on the highway and come visit us in Arlington, we'd love to have you.
All right. What is another way that we can strengthen our community? For instance, I don't like it perhaps if I'm standing in a department store and I'm hearing someone threaten a child, and there's a security man standing close by, and they're saying things like, he's going to get you. We need to put back respect for those that serve our community.
Agree.
And do you see a need for that?
I see a need for that, and quite frankly, Rachel, I see a need for people to pray for the law enforcement and their firefighters, their first responders. Because in all honesty, we are the folks who are seeing folks at their worst, who are hopeless and who are filled with despair. And if you have first responders who know Jesus and know the love of Christ, what an opportunity and ministry that is. But we need to continue to pray, not just for protection, but for wisdom and discernment. And that's something that anyone in Longview can do for their police officers and firefighters.
Yes. Is there anything else that comes to mind while we're talking on this that maybe someone could contribute as a voluntary way to show love and appreciation?
Absolutely. You know, Mission Arlington does not accept, our budget is based on donations.
All right.
It is, the entire budget. And whether that's someone walking over from a church Sunday school bringing some canned goods, or if that's someone making a financial contribution, 96 cents of every dollar goes to the people. Because those who are on staff serve as full-time missionaries. They get their food out of the food pantry, they get their clothes out of donations and such. So we try to be the best steward of God's resources as we possibly can.
Are you seeing lives impacted?
Oh, mercy. Yes.
Tell us some things that you're seeing.
Well, actually one that's quite personal to myself. I have an 18-year-old child living with me now, young lady, who has aged out of foster care, but I've known her since she was 10. And I knew her from the Bible study I taught in the motels. Both of her parents are decades-long drug addicts. They're homeless. We don't know where they are right now. She's been in and out of Child Protective Services over the years. But whenever her family would move to a different pay-by-the-day motel, we would keep up with them because we wanted her to know that Jesus loved her, and we did too. And so we'd make sure she had food and she had clothes and everything she needed to stay involved in school. Well, at the age of 14, she ended up having to go live with some family out in Arizona, which was a blessing for her. But she always wanted to go to college here in Texas, and so we made that happen. She's been staying with me for 3 summers now. She has earned a full scholarship to Baylor University, and she just finished her first year of college.
And so what's her major?
Her major is social work.
So she's giving back that which she's received.
Yes, she is.
That's just
And she
great.
will continue to do so.
Oh, that's just great. What do you see for the future of youngsters? Are you seeing a change, or are you seeing society suck them in?
I see positive things.
Good.
I do. I see it's so easy to turn on national media and see all of the negative things young people are doing, Rachel. But there are some strong Christian young people that are going to live a lifestyle of purity, that have respect, that love Jesus, and are not afraid to tell others about Jesus. So I see good things. I see positive things for our young people. I do.
I do too. I'm just speechless here. Longview has a number of wonderful community missions and ministries and clinics. We do, but I don't think that we have anything to approach the magnitude of what you're speaking of. And I think so much that we owe you gratitude for driving over and sharing your inspiration.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask if it would be all right. Are you still in touch with your parents?
Oh, please, absolutely. I am. And as a matter of fact, my brother and I pray for them and for other family members on a regular basis. We're praying that God will unveil their eyes, just like it says in Peter. He wishes that none would perish. And so that's how we pray for them.
Well, I'll join you.
Please do.
I
Please
will
do.
join you. Miss Bergen, you've just excited me about her. And as you all remember, she's in her 70s.
Yes, she is.
Here. I have a friend that we just interviewed recently, and she said, I thought the rocking chair would get me. But really, age is no factor with the things of God.
None at all.
And actually, in one way, we have much more opportunity because of the path we've walked.
And much more to give.
Much more
Yes.
to give, much
Yes.
more experience, but it's also made us more sensitive so that we can perhaps invest in a better, wiser way.
Yes.
I thought all I do was drink coffee and share recipes. And I am busier now than I've ever
bet.
been. But life has not been better.
Praise God.
And I just pray that for you as you are where you are in such a vital place, not only in the police department, but in Mission Arlington. And is there a number one prayer need right quickly? We've got about a minute that we can, as Longview, pray with you for your area there.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it the donations, or would it be literature? What would it be?
The Lord, we always pray that the Lord provides.
Yes.
But more than that, we really need to make sure that as believers we are unified and we are about our Father's business.
Okay. We are unified and about our Father's business. And in closing, I want to remind you of the blessings in Psalm 41. 7 blessings of fullness that come when you reach out to others in their need. Psalm 41. And with that, I say thank you for coming.
Thank you, Rachel.
And thank you so much for tuning in Outlook today. God bless you. See you again soon.